Moving is difficult at any time. It's one of the biggest challenges in our lives. But moving during lockdown and moving after you've lived in the same place for many years, what a challenge that must be. I've asked Penny Caird if she'll share something with us of the story of how she and her husband Andy set about moving to a new home here in West Swindon and then to another move that's coming just in the future. But I'll leave her to tell you all about that. Thanks, Penny.
Hello everyone, Penny here. I wonder if a particular verse has become special for you during 2020. I know for many people it's Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. I guess most of you know by now that my husband Andy and I are in the middle of moving house. Our pastor John has asked me to take a few minutes to share something of our literal journey and how God has faithfully led us. Let's start with a little background. Andy and I have just celebrated our 38th wedding anniversary, and in our married life we have moved around quite a bit. We moved to Swindon 22 years ago when he was appointed deputy head at Pinewood School. We thought we'd be here for perhaps 5 years and then move on. God had other ideas. My mother was getting increasingly unable to cope for herself, so we finally persuaded her to come and live with us, and we found a lovely house in Liddington, which had a wonderful purpose-built granny annex attached, and we moved in the summer of 2005. I became full-time carer for my mum for a year. Then, after a series of falls, she had to go into a nursing home just up the road. And she lived there happily for another 3.5 years. During our wedding, we were given a word of prophecy that stated that the Lord would bring across our path people who needed our care and love, who were broken and hurting, and he would touch them and bring about healing. Our new house was just such one. It was set in the countryside and very quiet and peaceful. Even the nearby M4 was really only a quiet rumble. It was big enough to host a wedding reception and a wake for a dear friend's funeral. It was also available to the church for retreats and meetings, a real blessing to us all. So why move? Well, over the past 10 years or so, Andy and I have spent most of our holidays on the Channel Island of Alderney. What started out as a new island to explore soon became a place we loved to return to. We soon made friends and 4 years ago took the plunge and bought a run-down bungalow. We had it done up and now we let it when we're not using it ourselves. Over the years we increasingly felt drawn to the island and its people. We would join the tiny Methodist congregation and were warmly welcomed by them, even named on their weekly prayer list. My heart was lost to the island years ago, and it's actually behind me as I'm speaking. But after much prayer, 18 months ago, the more level-headed Andy agreed that we were being called to live and serve there. So we put our house on the market last October. But the few viewings didn't lead anywhere. The time was not right. Then lockdown put paid to any movement, and we concentrated on doing what we could, helping to run food bank, shopping for folks, using our talents as we felt the Lord was leading us. It was frustrating as we needed to sell our house and buy somewhere in West Swindon to rent out while we were away. The Lord's timing, as always, was perfect. As soon as the estate agents opened up again, a lovely couple booked to look around. 20 minutes before the appointment, the estate agent rang to say her car had broken down and could I show them round? Perfect. As we walked round, they got increasingly excited, and we discovered they were Christians. They had been looking for 6 months, and they hadn't seen our house. They offered us the asking price. Now we were free to look too. We soon found a house in Toot Hill that was ideal. The owners had been let down at the very last minute by the previous buyer 2 weeks previously. So I firmly believe the house was being kept for us, and that was why we hadn't sold before. Our moving day was set. Then something totally out of our control happened to delay it for 10 days. I found this very hard to take, and I had to go for a long, hard walk and talk it out with God on my own. Do you ever do that? I was cross, frustrated, a low point. The Lord was very gentle with me and even let me in on the secret why it had to move. On the day before we moved, when they were packing us up, I was sitting in a dear friend's house using her Wi-Fi to watch my godmother's funeral, live streamed on YouTube. My friend not only happily agreed to this, but she sat through the whole thing with me, as did her teenage daughter. Neither of them are Christians, and we have been praying for her family for years. The service was lovely, very worshipful, and the gospel was preached clearly. Now I understood. All previous feelings of angst melted away as I saw God's perfect timing. I apologized to him for my lack of faith, and I was filled with his peace. We moved in September and immediately heard of a family who we know who'd been given notice on the house they were renting. We asked if they wanted to rent ours, and they will be moving in shortly after we move out. So, January the 8th sees us moving, plus our 2 cats, to start our new life on Alderney. We don't know what's in store, but we're absolutely certain it is where we are to be. And we would love to welcome you too.